Right. Good morning, everyone. Great turnout. Fantastic. Great to see everybody here. Yeah, good morning. So I'm Sean Nugent from Line Communications. I'm going to be talking about performance support with mobile, using mobile devices. I'm going to keep this fairly short. If you want to have a further conversation, we're just here. So do come and see us, because this is more of a conversation than a presentation. This is an opener to a bigger conversation. Just going to run through some things for today. We're going to look at what performance support tools are, what that means. Quick look at why mobile devices. Also, looking at what that means in terms of training, performance, and the role of learning and development. A few examples. And something around how you can develop these tools and how they fit into a blend. We think that's very, very important, that this is part of, this needs to be part of an overall training solution. So first of all, what are performance support tools? Well, it's quite an interesting area, actually, when you start to think about it. You think, well, what does that mean? Well, it's tools that people use to help them do their jobs, and that can mean, that's a very, very broad definition. And I think what we're talking about today are things that don't quite fit into one category and sometimes cross boundaries. And I think that's quite a challenge for L&D as well, that there are things that don't neatly fit into the learning and development box. So performance support tools can be physical. They can be things that you use in your job. They can be paper-based, or they can be digital. And obviously what we're focusing on today is digital. Digital ones are often referred to as electronic performance support systems, EPSS. You may have come across that term. Other words that are used, and I think fairly interchangeably in this area, are things like job aids and task support. In a previous role, I worked in a performance consultancy, and that was very, very much focused on helping people improve performance, not just delivering training. And I think there's quite a challenge that we have today about deciding whether we want to measure training or whether we want to measure performance. So just to give some examples of what those things can look like, these are all performance support tools, and these are obviously very historic things of a ready reckoner that you might use, things that help you do your job. SatNav's a good example of a mobile performance support tool. It helps you go from A to B. Checklists, probably use them every day. Make sure that you've performed the tasks that you meant to perform and that you perform them to the standard. And obviously things to calculate, things to work out what the outcome should be of based on a number of inputs. So these are all performance support tools. So there's really nothing completely new. There's nothing that's groundbreaking in that sense. What is quite a new area, I think, that's really developed over the last few years is why mobile. Mobile's a commonplace. I mean, there's all sorts of facts and figures about how many people have one of these. And just as a quick survey, who has got a smartphone here? Who has a smartphone? Right, pretty much everybody. It's kind of nice to ask it that way, because you don't want to ask who hasn't got one, because that's kind of put people a bit embarrassed to say they haven't got one. But I mean, most people have them. They're very, very common. Bring your own device, BYOD, has become more and more important over the last couple of years. The restrictions that we had, particularly with e-learning and with other forms of learning technology, were often dictated by corporate policy on IT systems. Mobile, to some extent, breaks that completely, because bring your own device means that you're relying on, like all of you here, the fact that people bring their own devices to work, and that's a great benefit. But it also raises a few challenges. There's also a few challenges with that. Mobile's great for people whose work is out of the office. So perhaps if your work is based on site, or if you're a field-based worker, if you're not in a place where you can easily get to classroom-based training, or you've got tasks that you need to do on site, it's a really, really useful tool. Can everybody hear all right down the back? All I can hear is that guy over there, which sounds very interesting, but not as interesting as this, of course. So field teams, remote consultants, service engineers, all really, really good audience for that. And of course, it's a digital channel, so it's very easy to update, maintain, and roll out content that is up to date. And of course, one great advantage of mobile is, and particularly smartphones, is that it can operate offline as well as online. So once you've downloaded content, you don't have to be connected. You can actually use it without a signal, which is quite important if you're in remote areas. And just some examples. These are just some examples that you just pull off the Apple App Store. You can download this stuff tomorrow. Some of it's free, some of it's very, very low cost. But there's all sorts of things here. There's things that help you do safety audits. There's things that help you decide what a suitable dose of nuclear medicine is. Things that help you decide how to analyze X-rays. There's things that are based on gun trajectories. There's all sorts of stuff out there. There's all sorts of tools that you can give to anybody in your workforce. And these operate across a number of devices. Most of them are phones. Some of them are tablet. Some of the bigger screen. There's also stuff on performance management, HR, how to conduct performance reviews. And the list just goes on. There's architectural applications, how to decide what glass to put in a particular building, how to calculate K values for building development. There's things like presentation slides, how to do effective presentations. There's all sorts of stuff that is there. There's loads of stuff free out there. And I think that's fantastic, but it does present a challenge. It presents a challenge for people that are trying to get their workforce to develop and undertake tasks in a particular way, that if they're using free tools, maybe you need to put some curation in place or some sort of control in place of what people use. So I think that raises a question, is this training, is this learning materials, or is it performance? And I think those two things have become somewhat lost. I think the focus on training and learning and development sometimes takes away from actually what should be a much better focus, which is how do you help people perform in their jobs better, more effectively, more efficiently. And I think if we look at some of the challenges and some of the differences between these two things, and particularly I'm looking at digital training and e-learning, which is sometimes delivered on a mobile phone. One of the characteristics of training or e-learning is that it tends to be single use. It tends to be used once. You go through the course or you go through the e-learning. You tick a box, you say you've done it. Performance support tools, you use many times. You use them as many times as you need to perform that task in your job. And I think, again, that presents a challenge. If we're very, very much used to this thing of measuring the fact that somebody's done something and they've done it once, actually, if you're giving people tools that they can use many, many times, it raises the question of, well, how does that fit into training and development and a curriculum-based approach? Training tends to prepare people for the jobs. Learning and development tends to prepare people for the jobs by sending people on courses. You go on a course, you learn everything you might need to know to do your job, and then you remember it and you undertake those tasks at work. Support tools support people whilst they're doing the job. So it's very, very much in the workplace. Phrases that you probably hear quite frequently here are just in case, just in time. So just in case, it means that you train everybody, you train people to do things that they might need to do in their roles. Performance support means that you give people tools that allow them to get access to that information when they need it at the point of need. And actually, I think over the last few years, there's been quite a lot of discussion around this about learning in the workplace. And I think that's sometimes been a little overemphasized, that you need just-in-time training, you don't need just-in-case. Well, the reality is, of course, you probably need both, because you don't want to be having a surgeon trying to work out how to perform a particular operation 2 minutes before they've done it. You kind of like the fact that they kind of have some underlying knowledge of the task before they do it. So it's a mix of both that's required. So curriculum-based against performance-based we talked about. And finally, it's really about learning outcomes. A lot of training and a lot of learning management systems tend to measure learning outcomes. So they measure completion, they measure scores. What they don't measure is the performance of the task. They don't measure the focus on work. So performance support tools look at this from a slightly different perspective, which is how do you measure the performance of the task, rather than how do you measure whether somebody's done the training. So I think that raises a really interesting question for the role of L&D. I did a session recently with some fairly senior HR people from a number of global organizations, and many of them were looking at this, and we were discussing this, and the question was, whether they saw that performance support was something that they should be giving their teams in their roles, learning and development. And I'd just like to ask the question here. I assume you're all some way connected with learning and development. How many people currently provide performance support tools to their staff? Not many. How many think they should provide performance support tools to their staff? Quite a few not sure. And that, that's pretty representative of other discussions, actually. The big question I have is, if learning and development don't provide these tools to your employees, who does? And I think that's a really interesting question. If you're not providing it, who provides it in your business? So I think we're all really, really clear that learning is something that learning and development should be providing. And associated with that, and again, the crossover into some of the tools we've looked at is into business systems. So some of these tools have quite a strong influence of business systems. So if it's a checklist or a process, you might have an online system that takes you through that process if it's a safety check. So there's a very close link between business systems and performance support tools. And the other thing is, if it's product-based content, there's quite a link to marketing or marketing information or product information, or it might just be policies, it might be procedures, it might be reference material. So certainly the work that we've been doing with mobile has really highlighted the fact that there are different aspects that go outside of all of these three. Mobile really helps to make that crossover between these three areas. And actually, some of the work that we've been doing, I'll show you some examples of, really sits in that middle area where it doesn't fall into one particular field, but it is about improving performance. And sometimes you need to cover all of these three areas to improve performance. And there may be more. There may be more areas. This is just some of the examples I'm going to look at later on. So just to emphasize, what does that actually mean? And I'll give you an example here. This is a tool we produced in defense. It's actually a tool that people use for performing maintenance tasks, routine maintenance tasks on military vehicles. And of course, there's lots of different vehicles, lots of different vehicle variants. So it's actually quite hard for people to know every single thing about that vehicle. So delivered on a mobile phone, or an iPod in this case, very, very easy to get to. You just enter the details of the thing you're working on. It gives you all of the service intervals, and it gives you all of the tasks that you have to perform. And of course, the link to performance support is, well, if you get to one of these and you don't know how to perform that task, or you're not quite clear how to perform that task, you can go in and you can view some videos, or you can view some content that will tell you how to perform these tasks. So it's performing two functions. It's the overlap between a business system, which is a maintenance system, and a training system, or effectively on-the-job e-learning support. So again, very, very strong crossover between the two. Work that we've been doing, a lot of my work is in the automotive sector, and that really highlights a great case for using performance support tools. So these are tools that we're producing partly to present vehicles. So if you're actually presenting a vehicle to a customer in a real life showroom, you actually need to know all the features of that vehicle. And again, that's quite hard because vehicles have huge amounts of features. You could never know it all. And currently, people use just basic paper-based reference information. But what that doesn't allow you to do is do things like show videos to customers. So these tools perform two functions, two or even three functions. One is they allow people to sit down with a tablet and learn everything they need to know about the vehicle before they present it. Secondly, if they're not sure about that, they can use it whilst they're performing their task of presenting a vehicle to a customer, and they can explain these facts and they can demonstrate these facts. So behind that is a whole load of data as well, so product briefs, comparison data, live data. So they can get access to that live data very, very easily. So they can, it helps them build the case for selling the product. So as a tool, it's very, very much something that is used as a piece of learning, but it crosses over into the business systems, but it also crosses over into what is a piece of marketing content. And again, the challenge, I think, for learning and development is if you're training your field teams to be able to sell, maintain products or deliver services, how much of that are you going to give them as just-in-case learning, and how much of it are you going to give them as just-in-time learning? So again, producing these, particularly for the Chinese market. This is the English version of the Chinese. I won't show you the Chinese example. Again, so you've got three ways you can use it. You can use it for learning. You can use it to check your own knowledge, so you can teach yourself how to perform these tasks. And finally, you can use it with a client. You can use it with a customer in the room to show them the features. So many different forms of that. The other thing we're developing at the moment is again, very much crossed over into the business systems, which is data collection. So how do you collect all this data from customers? I'm sure you've all seen these devices where you sign for something. You've seen it. Again, really useful for doing things like safety audits. If you're not sure how to perform that particular task, you can watch a video or you can see some content that describes how to best perform that task whilst you're going through the process. So it's a mix of a business system and it's a mix of learning. And that's very, very important. Again, we're producing some applications on tablet rather than on phone because we feel tablet has more screen space and it works much better. So this is for people taking people on tours around factories, factory tours. So you can tell them all the features. You click on a map, it takes you to all the relevant places, it gives you all the information, and also it helps you show videos of the particular features. So you can use that for many, many other features as well. Fantastic for induction, very good thing for induction for new employees on their first day. You can take them around, you can do it virtually, or they can use the application to take themselves around the building, shows them where everything is, shows them where all the different places are, shows them who to go and meet. So it's a really powerful tool that can be used in many, many different ways. Again, much more on the technical training, so how to undertake a particular technical task. Again, this is a technical task on a vehicle, a step-by-step tool that you can use whilst you're actually performing the task. You can use it to learn it beforehand. If you're not sure, you can use it as a reference. And you see it in a three-dimensional version of it, which will take you through those tasks. Again, linked to the business systems, business dashboards, very, very important. So you're pulling data in, which is presented to you on a mobile phone in the course of your work. And that helps you make decisions. It helps you make decisions about what kind of products you've got on display, what kind of where your products are displayed, because you can see in real time on your smartphone, you can see what effect interventions have had. You can see what the changes are. Again, the crossover there between learning and business systems is probably slightly more on the business systems side of things. Again, back to defence, work with some work in defence. I mean, this is probably the most extreme example. This is how to turn your Challenger tank on. And I'm sure that you don't just have a key fob for a Challenger tank. It's a bit more complex than that. But again, it's performance support to help guide you through a process. And that process may be something that you actually only do in it. You do very rarely. It's not something that you do every day. And it may be something that you were trained in, but you've not seen for 2 years because you've been out on tour where you don't have these vehicles. And again, probably one of the most common uses of performance support tools, and I've certainly used things, not this one, but I've used them myself for just language reference. Again, it's a great tool. You can look up a phrase, you can find the phrase back from it, you can hear the phrase. So language training of any sort is a really important use for these kind of tools. So just in terms of looking at how do you get these tools out to your teams? Well, it's really interesting that the learning management systems, they were never designed for this purpose. They weren't built for this. So they don't provide a terribly great vehicle for it. The corporate intranet, well, that's kind of all right. You can get content out this way. Probably some challenges if you want to get content to operate offline. The public app stores, you can put apps on the Apple App Store, although that's actually quite challenging sometimes to get content on there. that raises questions about, well, if you want your performance support tools for your teams to do their particular tasks for your business, do you really want that out in the public domain? So the fourth option there really is the enterprise app store, and I think that's something we've seen quite a bit of recently, and we're certainly working with clients with enterprise app stores. And I think that's something we'll see a lot more of, where you've got security, you've got control, plus you can put all of the other apps that are on the Apple app stores in there, and you can curate content and provide it to your workforce. I just wanted to say a couple of points on this about tracking and measuring. And the first question I had on that is, again, other sessions I've done where people say, well, how do you track this on a learning management system? How do you track it with SCORM? Well, I kind of question, why do you need to track this? If you're giving people really useful tools that improve their performance, how much data do you need back about that? Because it's not a pass-fail. It's not something that you've taken and you've passed the test. It's actually something you're going to use every day. So I think you need to be really careful about what you need to track. SCORM wasn't really designed for this. I don't know if you're familiar with SCORM API. It's not really designed. It was designed for single-use learning. It's designed to be completed, passed, and with a score. That's about it. The Tin Can Experience API, it's still very much learning focused. Some of the work that we're doing, we're using Google Analytics more, which is more helpful because it tells you not so much about the user, but about the tool. It tells you whether the tool's being used. And the holy grail, really, for us is to track performance data against training. So actually, what difference do these tools make to sales, first-time fixes, doing your job to the highest standard, performing safety audits to the highest level? Talked about this before, a bit briefly about enterprise app stores. Just an example of one there, so some work Jaguar Land Rover we're working with. We have an in-house app store, so we have a number of partners we work with to provide that. And it means you can get all this stuff out there, and you can track, and you can secure content. So that's very, very important as well. Finally, just making tools in a control way. The key things about this is being able to develop tools quickly, at low cost, without specialist skills, because some of the programming skills that you need to develop for smartphones are quite advanced and quite complex. So that's why we developed a tool called LineStream. You can come and find more out about that, which allows you to develop any sort of tool you want very quickly, very easily, without all the overheads and the complexity of high-value programmers. So you can see you've got a very easy-to-use tool that allows you to develop these apps. And finally, I would just say what we do believe is that all performance support tools need to be designed as part of a learning architecture. So performance support tools need to fit in with face-to-face training. They need to fit in with e-learning. They need to fit in with social learning. And there's many different aspects to that, and they do all need to join together. They're not just things that you can provide in isolation. But it's a really, really important part of the blend, and it's very, very much a part of a 70-20-10 mix to get that right. It's learning in the workplace. Some other applications we're currently developing at the moment. We're doing some work for healthcare, for the NHS Leadership Programme, doing some big piece of work there. We're looking at some apps for HR, performance review apps, so helping people to understand what they need to do literally 5 minutes before they go in, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 1 hour before, so you can just make sure you're having good conversations. Said before, the big thing we're looking at is linking business performance data to training needs, and that is an area that needs a lot more work, and I think the learning and development industry is generally quite a long way off that. That's something we're very keen to develop. Safety assessments we're developing, and other things we've saw some examples before with healthcare diagnosis. So the message is performance support tools, really, really important. We've seen their growth quite rapidly over the last couple of years, and I think we're going to see a lot more of it. If you want to come and talk to us more, we're just here. My colleagues are just here. They're very friendly. We're happy to have further conversations about it, and we've got plenty of literature on it, so do come and see us. Thanks, everybody, for your time. Thank you.